morning, everybody. This is Adrian with Beamer Speed again. We are now starting on episode 2 for the 1M, 1JZ, 2JZ, 3JZ, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be a conversion. So, as we're over here, we have the vehicle already D-paneled, as we spoke about. All the fenders, the front bumper, the side skirts, the rocker panels, whatever you want to call them. The rear is off. So now what we're doing is we have the car pretty much set in service mode. There's multiple ways you can pull an N54 for all you commenters. That's the wrong way. It doesn't matter. If you want to pull it through the trunk, have at it. So what's happening right now is Abel is here. He's removing the intercooler, and then we are going to be draining the fluids. We're going to pull the engine as one entire unit. So when you do it in service mode style, you take the core support off, and this entire system here completely comes off. You lower the vehicle once everything is disconnected. The coolant lines, the AC lines, the drive shaft, shifter assembly, wiring harness, and then you pull this completely forward as one unit with the cherry picker, which we have over here. Any generic, this is a Harbor Freight one. We've had it for 5 years, never been bad. You'd only need pretty generic tools. You don't really need that much. 18s, 11s, 13s, BMW always uses oddball sizes. Wrenches, torque sockets. You have longs, you have shorts. It's really nothing out of the norm of what you need. And we're gonna start pulling this engine here, pull the fan out. So we're gonna start time-lapsing everything, and I'll stop in between to explain a few things. On the time lapse, we pretty much got the front end off, exhaust off, the downpipes are disconnected, drive shaft disconnected. We unfortunately found that one of the drive shaft carrier bolts were completely sheared off. The prior seller tried telling me it was a loose exhaust bracket. I think it was his loose brainstem, because he tried lying to me about it, but we always find out in the end. Just like that light Bondo work on the roof there that had more Bondo than Jesus could put on his toenails. So at this point, we're pretty much taking apart the top end, as Abel is taking off the injection harness, the coil harness. What we like to do is we take the intake manifold off, we take the plumbing off, push everything aside, disconnect everything from under the plenum, as there are a lot of connections underneath. The crank position sensor harness, you have the high pressures, the knock sensors, you have the low pressure sensor, then underneath that you have the alternator connection, AC connection. So there's pretty much a rat's nest underneath, and the power harness for the starter and the alternator and whatever else I'm forgetting. So as soon as we pull that off, we're gonna show you here in a moment. So stay tuned and enjoy the time lapse. We lost a 13, so stand by for a moment.
What?
Yep. Did you find it?
Yes.
Where was it?
Behind the wheel.
Did I leave that there?
Yes.
Oh, we found it, we found it. So for the time lapse that you just recently saw, we took everything off that we had mentioned: intake manifold, power harness, XYZ. Now what we're doing is we have the engine pretty much ready for extraction. The transmission has been extracted on the brace side. If you come over here and look, you can see the brace is all loose. I got a nice positive here. The car has poly bushings, which is pretty interesting. And since the car is in the air now, I can show you what I was referring to about the broken exhaust bracket. See this right here? I can literally stick my whole finger in here. This is a 13 that's supposed to hold the center support bearing steady. If this doesn't this pretty much shakes around. So what we're gonna have to do is hammer this flat, and we're gonna have to weld a riv nut in here, or whatever the case may be, with the 13 to hold it in place. Now on the opposing side, we have Abel here trying to extract the nuts on the motor mount. We have to go into this area here, which is hard to say. Go in here, there are 16s or 17s, don't exactly recall. And once the motor mount nuts are removed, this motor is completely ready for extraction. And then we will be pulling the 2JZ out and then planting the 2JZ into this platform, and then creating the mounting points and modifying the subframe, which this area here has to be notched. And then we also reinforce the subframe completely, weld in motor mount plates for reinforcement, because we don't like them sinking in here, as the motor will probably make 800 horsepower. This area here where the motor mount sets in, we weld that completely shut, and then make a reinforced 1/4-inch plate of aluminum, and then make motor mounts from there. So from the prior time lapse, you saw us pretty much getting the motor ready. Now we have the motor mount arms disconnected, we have the trans disconnected, all of the essentials, the coolant tank, the power steering stays on the vehicle, and the AC stays in the vehicle. But pretty much at this point, we are now going to extract everything as one unit. So you need a cherry picker. What we do is we brace from the engine side in the front with the tow hook, and we go through a rear starter hole, and then we just lift the engine, and then we are going to fully extract. So we're pulling the motor out. The best way to approach this is you get a few rags, you stuff them in here with some gasoline, and you burn it, because the N54 is pretty much useless at this point. So now we're going to fix this, put it in the 5 series. This actually apparently was resealed, but it doesn't seem like it was done so well. So I'm gonna go through this, make sure everything's okay. I see that this is an LKQ trans, so this obviously did not come original with the vehicle, as this is a manual vehicle. And then at this point, we're gonna leave this as it is, separate the trans at this point, put the auto one as the 5 series is automatic. We have some leftover Bondo from the roof, that's lovely. And then we're going to start extracting the 2JZ from the 335i and mock it into position, and this should be ready to rock and roll. Okay, so we finished the N54 extraction. Now we have the 2JZ 335i finished. So going on from here, we are now extracting this engine. This way we're going to remove the hood. We're trying to keep it as simple as possible. It has a mil-spec harness, so it is one connection right here. You twist it off, and that removes the entire harness from the ECU side. Then we are going to hoist here and here. We're going to put the chain as close to the front as possible, because we need to rise the engine nose up, because we have to pull the trans out as one unit. And the trans is a little long for the 335i. It's a GS6. It's a little longer than the ZF. I want to say about 7 or 8 inches longer. And we disconnect the coolant lines, but luckily for us, the coolant lines have already been removed and drained. The oil's already been drained. Vibrant Van Gen clamps, if you haven't seen those, these are pretty not complicated. Push the pin, pull forward, and push the pin again, pull forward, and then this comes off completely, and that separates this, and you can pull the pipe off. This is just a sleeve that goes in here, and this makes it super simple. And this holds upwards of, I've heard, 150 PSI. And it's pretty secured, and from that point it's just simple little things. Then when the engine is out, we disconnect the harness, because this harness truly belongs with the car. It's just easier to remove everything outside of the vehicle, and then we'll start time lapsing the extraction. pretty much had to pull the front end off the car. As you see, the center port here is the support for the headlight bracket, and everything is over here. And then pretty much at this point, you have the core support, the radiator support, and we had to pull the intake manifold off. It actually ended up turning into a very larger project, but unfortunately, it's the way it has to be. So we have the whole front end off right now on the 2JZ setup, and now we are going to extract. As Abel had to pull up, we had an issue where the oil pan was catching the subframe, but in the end result, this car is getting a fully built motor, so it doesn't truly matter. So we're going to pull this forward now as we extract, and then we already pulled the harness off of the engine. The transmission is still attached, and then we just have to pretty much mate and continue from this point. Okay, extraction is pretty much happening at this point. It's a little bit of a battle. You have to keep raising, pull, raising, pull, raising, pull. All right, Abel, we'll lift the rear end up a little bit and pull. All right, and at that point, that is how you pull a 2JZ out of a 335i. This is a stock feature on N54 deletes. Okay, so at this point, we have the engines pulled, and now we're gonna be working on the 1 Series subframe. What happens in essence to the 2JZ swap, if you wanna come over here with me, the back side of the subframe right here, let me move this stuff out of the way. This has to be notched from here all the way across, as you follow my finger, all the way to here. And you wanna make sure you preserve the ears for the steering rack to mount. Because some people, they try to modify that and you lose the functionality of the steering rack, which is a big problem. So we chop this, we shorten that, we box it in. So we put a piece of a square tube inside here, and we weld it. And where the motor mount goes, if you want to come towards me over here, where the motor mount goes, in this general area, which you want to come from above and take a look, right here, we weld this plate completely shut. And this right here reinforces the subframe tremendously. That will be done tomorrow. We're just going to plop the engine in position with the subframe out, and then we're going to continue the next episode from this point. Tune in, and thank you.